Yes, please. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another photo Mish Mash. This one being broadcast live April 14th, 2021. I'm a little rusty because some of us have been traveling, but I'm so glad to be sitting back down with you all. And today, joined by my good friends and fairly regular co-hosts, David Carr and Tonya Wilhelm. Let's, David Carr, let's say hi to you first and give Tonya just a few more minutes to breathe because she just sat down.
Well, just take a deep breath, Tonya. We'll get you back on the program here. Hello, everybody, and it's really great to be back doing this show. It's been I guess over a month. Toby, you and I were in Tanzania for a few weeks there, so it's really great to be back. Thanks for having me, as always.
Sure, thanks for joining me. And Tonya, how are you doing today? Tonya, can you hear me?
Sorry, I lost it for a second, but I'm back. Okay. This is par for the course here for me today.
Some technical difficulties, but we're going to work through them. No worries.
Yeah.
No worries. Yeah.
Did you ask me something that I didn't hear? Is that what
I just said? How are you? Now we know.
This sums it up.
Yeah.
I am surviving. I am well enough.
Good. So let's tell people real quick that this show is just kind of mishmash of all things photography. We got some exciting stuff. The Canon R3 was officially announced, that kind of development announcement yesterday with some teaser specs. There is one feature in it that people have been asking for Canon to return to their cameras for over 20 years.
Really?
So we'll be talking a little bit about that. I'm going to be curious to get your guys' impression, plus some other specs that seem really impressive, and what we're going to talk about, what they haven't mentioned yet. Maybe they learned a little from their earlier R5 and R6 launches, mostly the R5. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Sony had two kind of under-the-radar secret upgrades that have me, as a Sony user, a little annoyed. We'll talk about that. Plus, we've got your images that you all submitted to us to review. And just a reminder, if you're watching the show and you're not a Pen member, you should consider joining. Not only do you get our feedback on your images, but you get tons more content. You can learn more about that at photorec.tv/pen. But one of the things that we were just talking about, and Tonya, you were just talking about, that I want to spend a little bit of time on, is the huge number of participants we have this year that are entering the PPA competition. This is, right now, it's districts. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is and what you just did today?
Sure. And I'm not an expert on this. This is my second time entering. So if I'm wrong, someone can correct me in the comments. But essentially, the IPC, which is the International Photographic Competition, is in the fall, and that is the PPA's big competition where you can earn merits towards your degree. Districts is kind of like getting your foot in the door, because if you merit during districts, you can have that merit sealed for IPC. So I like the idea of districts because it takes a little bit of the pressure off. As far as if things don't go well in districts, then you have an opportunity to either change or resubmit for IPC. And I just, like, at the last second here, because I've been dragging my feet, I entered both the Photographic Open, which is photography, and they also have an artist competition, which judges editing and I guess your digital skills. And I've also entered that. So I have two cases in, but I just got my artist case in like right before the show.
That's awesome. And the idea of a case is a series of images, correct?
Well, it's just 4 images. They don't have to be a series. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So 4 kind of the collective works that you are submitting.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's something that, David and Allie McKay have both participated in, and as a result have earned their master photography degree. And we have some other folks that are well on their way to earning that as well. And now, after kind of a good number of people just kind of deciding to participate in the past year, we've had a bunch more interest and more people join in. And it's just really, really cool to see people work at their craft at this high of a level, because the feedback you get can be incredibly valuable and your growth as a photographer. So I'm just really excited. I'm not participating, but I'm really excited for everybody that is participating. It's a neat thing, and I can't wait to see how everybody does.
Yeah, definitely.
When Tonya, when will you get feedback from districts? So the deadline to submit was today. When do people start hearing? Do we know?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I was so worried about the deadline.
Yeah, no, that's the important thing to know. The rest will just happen.
I don't appreciate though that they made the deadline for this right before the deadline for taxes. Like that's like really cruel. That's a lot of pressure to put on people.
Yeah, especially a lot of photographers who are actually business owners as well. You're juggling both those sides, the art of side of it and the total business side.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually a pretty good point. Yeah. Yeah. Roy put in chat, and I just have it up on the screen right now. If you want to follow Tonya, her Instagram is right down there on the screen, and her links to her social medias are down below. As you mentioned, you have entered both the photography competition and kind of the illustrative competition, with where Photoshop is a critical element. And so it's just really neat to see. It's one of the things that I love about photography is that it can be everything from wildlife and documentary photography to water drops in your basement to kind of illustrative art in Photoshop, and just the sheer breadth of what somebody can create with a camera in hand is pretty cool. So
yeah.
Well, and actually for the artist category, none of the images have to be mine. It just has to be edited by me.
Okay.
And I did see Kimberly put in the comments, was it Kimberly? Yes. There are actually 3 competitions that are happening: the artist competition, the wedding competition, and then the photographic open.
Okay.
So.
Okay, great. Thanks for that update, Kimberly. Appreciate that. So you got about a month of biting your nails before you're going to start finding out some of this, some of the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, the nail biting is over. Like getting them ready is now you just wait and find out. And
it's a tedious process. And I've never done the artist category, but it is not like just, I'm just going to throw these up there. Nah.
No.
Yeah.
And I decided to pivot yesterday on 3 of my entries.
Oh, wow.
So 3 of the 4, you're
3?
like, let me switch this up day before. All right. Okay.
Wow.
All right. Fair enough.
I actually feel far better about this. They were all images that I had done before. It would have been more of a struggle to go the direction I was originally heading. So
Yeah.
We'll see. I have no idea with the artist category. When I look at the past winners, it's so all over the place. Like I'm just not sure always what they're wanting. So,
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll find out. This is how you find out.
That's right.
Yep, that's right. And I've just got another comment from Kim up there. The IPC judging is September 12th to 7th. And she makes a really great point. And this is, I think this is what got a lot of people excited in the pen community, is it's open for everyone to watch. So even if you aren't a PPA member, even if you didn't participate, you can watch these judges talk about these images. And that alone, even if you didn't submit any, is a fantastic way to see what they're looking for. And it's also, I should say, it's not a mystery. You can go to PPA's website and find the rubric. That makes me feel like a high school teacher when I mention rubrics, because that's back when I used to use them. But you can find the rubric by which they are judging images. And it is, again, whether or not you plan to ever participate in this competition, it might be something you want to look over, just to kind of see what elements of an image. I think it's the 12 or 13 elements of a successful image is what you can find there. So It's very good. So very good. Very cool. All right, nice. Well, we're excited about that. And of course, we'll be bringing more updates as we get around that period of learning. David Carr, we were just talking, you and I were in Tanzania. Amazing trip. I mean, it always is, I think, to some degree. This was your second time. This was my third time. It's hard to put into words. And it's so fun to travel with participants who it's their very first time, because there was a moment at which Tim Scott was in my van in that first day, and he turned to me and he said, I had no idea we were going to see so many animals. Because literally, 20 minutes after driving away from the little grass airstrip that we landed at, there are giraffes, there are
Yeah.
zebras, there are wildebeest, there are 4 different types of antelope.
Yeah.
And it's mind blowing. And
It is.
And this trip had that kind of special aspect of we were the first larger group to be back in the Serengeti in basically a year.
Mm-hmm.
And the economic impact, which is something that it wasn't really on my radar. David had been talking about it, but honestly, I was like, oh my gosh, this COVID thing is still pretty real. Most of us are vaccinated, but we all got tests. We've all made it back safely. But the economic impact from our trip was not to be understated in any way. It helped people put food on the table. It helped people make sure that their kids in Tanzania could continue to go to school.
Yeah.
And David's been releasing that series of videos about it. That's just awesome.
Yeah.
I sent out Babu, who was one of our guides today, and just, God, what a great dude. His very, very heartfelt message about that. What a trip.
Yeah. Yeah. It was incredible. It was so... I actually started recording a podcast today just to talk about the trip, basically, and
awesome.
That hopefully should be out in the next couple of days. I just, it is one of those things where you can't really put it into words. You have to experience it. And the thing is, each McKay trip that we do, I've really thought about this lately, is like each McKay trip is a unique experience, because even if you've been there before, you're with a different group of people. And you form these bonds. It's kind of like you're this family for however long the trip is. And you have all these different dynamics and the personalities and different people that really click together well. And then, just all of that alone is like, you can't really convey that to people who weren't there to experience it. And then on top of that was just the relationships with the folks in Tanzania, our guides, who took us on these all-day treks through the Serengeti and into the Ngorongoro crater, and just dust flying everywhere, and the road is bumpy, and they're just driving happily, doing what they love to do, and something they haven't been able to do for a year now. And just to be able to be a part of that, and then just the people in the different campsites that we stayed in. Yeah. The people always impact me more than the animals. The animals were like the icing on the cake, and it was sweet icing. I mean, amazing what we saw. But it's amazing how much you come back from a trip like that and you realize that the images are no doubt awesome and so fun to go back and look at. But it's those ties we made, those bonds we made with one another that were they're just so special. And it just shows something, like it says something about our common humanity and what we were made for. And I just had the most incredible time. And I got to bring my son Wyatt with me, which was a dream come true for him. And just, we had the best time.
Yeah. You got some fantastic photos.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Your Instagram is shared down there. A point, it's in the thumbnail. I still have it wrong. I'm sorry about that, but it's David Carr photo, no underscore anymore. So just straight up.
Yeah. I finally got rid of the underscore.
Nice. Banish that underscore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said. And it was just a great trip, and I've loved seeing your photos. And it's neat. It's interesting because, so often we're just a few vehicles away from each other. Yeah. But what you've captured and the perspectives, I'm like, wow, there's several of these things I never saw. And so I just love being able to see all of the different participants as they kind of start to share out their content from the trip. And it's very cool.
Me too. And likewise to you, Toby. You've shared some stuff that I'm like, where was that? I didn't see that. It's just it's so cool, the different angles and perspectives we get. And I'm truly grateful for the time that we got to spend there, and just the impact that it has had and will continue to have on my life and my son's life and everybody who went. So
yeah. I'd love to. Wyatt was an awesome young man. I am excited. Thank you. To see him on some future trips, and I'd love to get my kids on some trips too.
It needs to happen.
Trips like that. Yeah. Which actually, Fiona is headed with me to Moab next week.
That's wonderful. Okay, good.
So we're really excited about that.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Nice. Good. And then David, you mentioned you've been pretty busy since you got back and just did a shoot that pushed you into video a little bit. Do you want to talk a little more about that?
Yeah, I had this exciting opportunity. There's a girl, she's a 12-year-old girl that goes to the school that my boys go to. And she was born without a left arm. It basically stops at the elbow. And so she's lived her whole life. You know, it doesn't feel like a disability when you've never experienced what it's like to have 2 hands and 2 arms. But no doubt the challenge that presents to anybody, just trying to live a daily, day-to-day life. She's just one of those people that you're probably going to hear about someday, because she just has this amazing attitude and this amazing perspective on life, and just her default is to smile and to just have joy. And, even in the midst of what to us would seem like a tragic thing. But what's really cool is in the last year, she was basically sponsored by a prosthetics company based in upstate New York. And they gave her this prosthetic arm it's Bluetooth compatible, and
wow.
it can send information up to their headquarters, and they can read what it's doing and how it's working. And she can operate this thing using the muscles in the end of where her arm ends.
Oh, wow.
She has trained herself to grasp and to pinch and to move this hand. And it's just phenomenal. And so her parents were asked if they would be okay doing a photo shoot with her for the company, kind of as one of their main, figures. And they asked me to do the shoot. So I was really, really honored.
Awesome.
And also a little nervous because it's a big job. And but I'm delighted to say I sent everything to them 2 days ago. Fortunately, I didn't have to edit, which was sweet. But I did video and photos of her and her family, and just all these different moments. Her brushing her hair, holding the brush with this prosthetic, and mixing up some brownie batter, and just playing Monopoly with her family. And anyway, got all this video and photo stuff sent, and they were really, really, really happy with it. Just said it was like Christmas morning opening up the gifts. They were so excited to see it. So that just meant the world to me, because I worked really hard on it and really took it seriously. It was such a joy. So
nice. Yeah, I'm just curious on you are primarily a photographer. You've done some video. Was there anything you did to make sure that you nailed the video? Did you watch pen videos that we have on how to shoot video or anything like that? Or, it was basic enough that you're good to go?
Well, I mean, I think I took a lot of cues just from seeing things that I like, and footage, maybe like in commercials and things where, there are a lot of commercials nowadays with this kind of like slow motion effect going on, and these kind of like little intimate portraits of people that I just tried to think along those terms. So I shot it so that it could go to slow motion. Shot it at 60 frames per second. For anybody who knows anything about video, that's typically a good starting place if you're going to try to slow it down and give kind of that cinematic effect to it. But there's a lot of it that I don't really know what I'm doing. Thankfully, I didn't have to capture audio, which I have the gear to do it, but it's just one more element to have to worry about. So thankfully, I didn't have to worry about that. And I shot it with a gimbal, so it would be smooth, and it was. But it looks really good. I'm very, very happy with it. And on the photography side, the only challenge for me was, since I knew I wasn't going to be editing, I really wanted, when they open these photos up, it's very important that your client is not having to, sift through a bunch of disclaimers about, well, sorry, that one's really dark, but we can brighten it, or sorry, that one's really bright, or sorry, you can crop this. They needed to look almost done, almost finished, even as raw photos. And so, of course, I only sent the ones that lent themselves to that. It's not like all of them did, but I still sent them about 300 images to sift through. And, it was a good challenge for me to nail it, to really get it right in the camera as much as possible. And we'll see what happens with it, but I'm super excited.
Yeah, that's a really cool. I often would not be really happy about sharing out my images because I almost underexpose everything, but the idea of trying to really nail it in camera so that they look good. Did you do anything otherwise? Did you apply any picture profiles? Or I guess none of that really applies in RAW.
No, I mean, at this point, I literally took the RAW files and uploaded them to a Dropbox folder and just said, there they are, which, cool. That took about a year to upload those. But I just was like, this is how I'll send them if that's what you want. They said, that's fine. And, again, sometimes you look, I would look through these images and be like, oh, that one's kind of dull, or, it's a raw photo. So it just doesn't have all that life and color in it yet, but I played around with a few just to see what was going to be possible, and they're gonna work. Fortunately they had a very bright house with like white walls, and everything was very light and airy, and so that's very popular. So
yeah,
it works.
Nice.
Well, good for you. That takes a lot of bravery, actually, I think.
Thanks.
Especially because, well, videos vary out of my wheelhouse, so that would be intimidating to me. But even this past year with clients, I've decided to start sending them an initial gallery and then having them choose their proofs, and then those are the ones I edit.
Yeah.
Which I know that's common practice for a lot of people, but that took me a while to get to.
Yeah.
Sending people the finished, this is the art that I make. And transitioning from that was scary. And I still don't have to send them raws. Like, I still can do some cleaning up first. So.
Yeah, and I do that sometimes too. If I send a bunch of photos to a client, a lot of times I will bump the contrast a little, or just get them a little bit more vivid. But this was like, no, I'm just going to send them exactly as is, so they can do whatever they want. And if they have somebody that truly knows what they're doing with Photoshop or Lightroom, they'll know. They'll look at them and go, oh yeah, we can work with that. If they don't, then they might be looking at them going, what's this? But that's not the response I got, so I'm just going to go with it.
Nice. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to part of the show. It's one of our favorite parts. But we're always working at trying to make it as efficient as possible. We're going to sit down and look at your photos that you've submitted in. That's Pen members. You had an opportunity to send photos in over the last couple of weeks, and we are going to take some time to give you some feedback on those. So, what do I need to do? I click that. There we go. Okay. And as I say, we just try to make this part efficient because we really do enjoy giving this feedback. But sometimes when I go back and capture, do the table of contents for the show, I realize that this is like sometimes 60% of the show. So we want to, make sure we're moving through these as efficiently as possible. So I just kind of remind that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. First up, we've got Pam Case's Sleepy Sea Lion, or I actually don't know if it's a sea lion, some kind of fuzzy sea mammal creature with a nice little yawn and cute little teethies.
Yeah.
The first thing I think of when I see this, Pam, is first off, nice. This is a good shot. We've got great focus on our subject. I think I like rule of thirds that's working here. But what I hear echoing in my head is Allie McKay's voice of, squint your eyes at your image, and is there anything that catches your eye when you're squinting? And that's usually very bright or very dark areas that kind of draw your eye when it's in blurry mode away from your subject. And this kind of end of the rocky coast where we have either sky or water back there, I'm not sure which, really keeps pulling me up away from our subject. Either of you feel similar?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it didn't hit me initially, but I definitely think it's not that it can't be there, having the brighter portion there, but I think you may want to just downplay it a little bit with a brush, or, you could go into Photoshop and literally clone all that out, or you could crop it like you're doing.
Crop in a little bit. Yeah,
I think that's... that's not adding anything important to the image. In other words, that bright area is just, it's what you saw, but it's not necessarily serving the image. So
yeah. And there's Lightroom illustrating why you should always use Photoshop when you actually want to do good replacement. Well, it's sampled from like one of the strange odd places.
Yeah, the whiskers.
So, the whiskers. And also just the fact that it's doing, we could do a clone, but it's
that usually works better.
There we go. So, but you can see it without feathering. So again, working over in Photoshop would be great for that. Maybe a little more feathering, and then we're messy again. But you get the idea.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions to this? I mean, otherwise, I feel like I'm pretty happy with this, Pam.
Yeah, I think I was gonna suggest cropping, and you did that. I might pull this into Photoshop or a program where you can sharpen it just a tiny bit more. But I'm also looking at it on a screen. So I could be wrong about that.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm really struggling with letting that little bit there go.
But
I think it is pretty nicely sharp when it fully loads. Maybe.
Pam, She's been really submitting some strong stuff here lately.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yep, she has. All right, let's move on. Roger Hunt has Springtime Delicacy.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
Oh.
That's a beautiful scene going on there.
It is. It is. And the light. So we've got a backlit subject, the light coming through the flowers, and also really kind of the rim light on our, I think, some type of sparrow. Really nice.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
very
is
nice.
a really well backlit shot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's not just blown out sky backlit. It's got some texture there. You know, one thing that just initially hits me is just a minor thing. I would probably crop in from the left a little and lose those kind of blurred out, kind of beige colored bits, just because it's on the edge and it can be a little bit of a distraction. You could either crop or you could clone. But I just think you just want to watch your edges, because sometimes they can get a little noisy or a little busy, I should say. And at that point, that might require cropping from the right a little. I don't know, but it felt like that was just a minor thing that could be addressed.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. I brightened it another half a stop. And that's one I think you get into personal preference. I mean, you mentioned this in photographing the young lady's house. You know, it was nice, bright and airy in there. I really tend to be drawn towards those types of images, and I felt like there was a little bit more room there, Roger. But it's pretty minor feedback. I don't know, Tonya, you got anything to add?
Nope, I absolutely agree with that. And I liked it when you zoomed in. I think he could have 2 images here if he didn't, want the tail. But nope, I was going to say the same thing, so I won't take up more time than that.
Yeah, nice. Nicely done, Roger. All right. Becky's got Brown Bear. And if you take a moment to just kind of enjoy this image, you notice that its eyes follow its gaze, and it's down here on the salmon that's just leaping out of the water, leaping for its life. So it's a neat moment to capture. She captured, and this was on our Alaska bear boat trip. Coming up on almost 2 years ago now, which is crazy. Yeah.
I like it.
This is another one where I might work a little bit on warming the bear up, getting him to be a little bit more. As I started to bring up the whole image, I feel like I'm washing him out and losing some of his color. So I might bring that up a little bit more, and maybe just that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, actually, I wonder if just warming the fur up a little bit on the bear, it might give it a little bit more visual appeal. Because I think all the other colors are working. The green is kind of muted, but it's there, and it might make that bear stand out a little bit more. Not that the bear is lost, but it just colors. I'm getting more and more tuned into colors these days, and trying to. And it's really hard. I mean, I struggled the other day with an image of mine for a long time, trying to figure out how to get the colors right. And but when you really nail it, it really can. I don't know. It can really take it to a new level. But this is an awesome shot.
Yeah,
it is.
The only other thing that I might suggest is a little bit more work in noise reduction. And that might be hard for you guys to see. I feel like there's just a little bit more noise taking away some of the detail than I want to see. But I'm on the fence about that. It's not a big deal, but it's something else you might want to work on a little bit.
Yeah, the only other thing is, if this were mine, I would really wrestle with the foreground and at least play with it. I know there's a lot there right underneath the bear that you probably can't get rid of, but there's just that little piece right at the left corner, I guess. And I don't know if I would have tried to crop that out or not, or maybe even just clone some of the water down there, but
just allow the water to flow down into the very corner of the shot. Yep, I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I agree.
It's an incredible moment, like fantastic.
Very cool. Nicely done, Becky. All right, Mike has Meltdown Begins.
Wow.
I don't want any more cold weather.
That's, it's funny. I was like, I was trying to figure out the kids are on spring break and they had a nice vacation with their mom, but I was like, well, let's do something, guys. I don't want to just watch you sit in the house. So I was like, let's go up to the mountain and go sledding. My son is like, Dad, it just got nice out. Why don't we want to go snow? So we had a little fairy event yesterday instead. I was like, okay, point well taken. Yes. All right. So here's what I love. I love the depth of field to this image in the fact that we have this kind of soft fall off on both sides of the longest icicle, which also happens to be producing a drip right at the very moment you captured, which I probably was planned, Mike. So nice work there. But I do wish the drip was as sharp as the icicle.
Yeah.
Because it's an important aspect in this image. You agree there, Tonya?
I do. I think there's a very small possibility that you could clone the tip of the icicle and add that detail in there.
Yeah.
But that's what it needs, man.
Yeah. We want, and I think it is, let's see, shutter speed is 1/400th of a second. So it possibly could be shutter speed versus depth of field. I bet it is. But that to me is a critical part of making what is a cool idea of yours, really making it go, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm with Tonya. I mean, I think this is one of those where I would probably take the creative license to just clone and kind of make my own replacement water drop. But there are a lot of different ways you can do that. But
this is also a tough thing because I shoot a lot of macro, and this is something that I always wrestle with as far as I love the depth of field and how the icicles fade off, but I also want to be so close to that it's hard for me to know where I want to crop this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think there is some room for coming in from the left, a little bit more of a symmetrical feeling there.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool, Mike. Thanks for sharing. Chris has one from, I love seeing these images submitted from our workshops. This is from our Yellowstone, just 2 months ago in cold Yellowstone. I said that already. And what was neat about this is, so this spot is called Dead Dog Forest. And you said, well, why is it called Dead Dog Forest? I've heard that name for years. Finally, this year I asked, and the answer is because all the trees lost their bark.
Gosh, that sounds like a dad joke.
It is very much. But what was cool this year was, for the first time, we had a bison just kind of hanging out back there in these woods. And it was a bit of a challenge to capture them in any kind of way that was interesting or recognizable, that it wasn't just some lump. But I think Chris did a nice job here of making sure that we've got that forefront of the bison kind of in that clear.
Yeah.
I like this image a lot because they had a little bit less snow this year. So we have the brown grasses here. We have then the snow, and of course these trees, which is really why we stopped here in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm struggling to try to figure out if I would do anything, what it would be other than black and white comes to mind just as an option. Because the colors that are there are not really vibrant, exciting colors. They're just kind of there. So it just kind of, sometimes black and white in a snowy scene, just, it just really simplifies. And because you have all these vertical lines, all this texture, and this bison. And to me, the bison, even though you see him or her, whatever, when it's in color, it gets a little just lost amongst all the other stuff. So to me, this makes it more interesting, in my opinion.
I think it's a nice suggestion. I like it a lot. The only thing I'm dealing with, and I don't know, either of you can let me know if I'm being too picky or not, is all of the trees. You've got all of the tops of them, except for these two ones here that were just a little bit taller.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know if it matters that much. Tell me what happens if we switch this to a portrait. Do we lose too many of the trees?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so.
There's another picture over here on its own, I think, that is nice vertical with all of those.
Yeah.
Those trees.
And I want to just give one other alternative approach to this. I do like in black and white. I also like in color. And I think as a landscape, It's really strong, but I might take out the bison.
Oh, really? Because
I just feel like there's, I don't know. I want the center where there's like the void in the trees to be the focal point, but the bison is. So I kind of keep like ricocheting back and forth between that. And I realize that the animal is probably part of the like emotional connection to this image for anybody who's there. But because it's not an impressive image of that animal, and I do think this is a strong landscape, I might just remove one version at least.
I see where you're going with that. I think that's a worthy suggestion.
I noticed in that kind of updating the cropping and showing those other that there is enough room, Chris, to include the tops of those trees. So that really solves my issue. John in comments wants to know, what does a really tight panel look like where we kind of get rid of all sky? I'm just curious for a second.
I was wondering too, because it's actually kind of cool because it adds this. There's this mysterious thing about like what's above the top of this frame,
and we're forced to look through the trees. Whereas when we have the full aspect of it, your eye kind of can wander and spend time up above the trees. But now we are forced, and I think the bison becomes much more important part of the story.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just laughing because I offended everyone by wanting to remove the bison.
No, I don't think so. I think it's a fair, I talked when we rolled up here, hey, this was special because this is the first time we saw bison here. So Chris was probably like, let me make sure I get this bison good. But I haven't shared any of those shots because none of mine were this good. And I just went back to the kind of the straight landscape of the spot. So.
Tonya, we know you're one of those people. We get it.
I would be hugging that thing. Okay, I love it, but I'm just saying it could be.
No, I know what you mean, and also just not to get. And I know we're harping on this photo for a while, but I do feel like it's worth suggesting. Sometimes you can't control what's in front of you. You're there. You're not going to walk closer to the bison in this situation. But sometimes when the animal in an image is so small, it really kind of gets lost. No matter, even if you know what it is, it's not a picture of a bison. It's a landscape that has a large bison, but in a perspective wise, a very small bison. And so I can see the cause for like saying maybe just remove it. But then, obviously it tells a different story. So
Roger, I'm not a bison hater.
No, we know you're not.
I love it.
No. I noticed Chris warmed this up. I actually did another one and warmed it up even a little bit more. I think, if you're not going to go black and white as Carr suggested, I think really having this to be a nice warm color in the foreground is interesting. And works. You could even try to get the sky a little bit more blue if you wanted to leave that in there. And then you're working more in those colored kind of complementary color tones.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Nice. Let's move on. Jeremy's got Eagle Crest. He's not blue and red. There we go. That was the highlight tools. Eagle Crest, Spencer Sundog. So, Jeremy posts some really cool snowboarding shots from Eagle Crest ski area near his home. And there's some aspects I like of this, Jeremy, but the couple of things that take me away from being really excited about this image is one, I don't know, maybe I'm dumb, but if I didn't know that you were frequently a snowboard and ski, I might look at this for a moment and go, what's this guy doing? Because I don't see enough of his snowboard.
Yeah.
I guess he's wearing ski goggles. I don't know. So, like Tonya hates bison. I apparently can't tell people are snowboarding. I don't know. I'm not sure. But it just doesn't hit me in the face that he's doing a, really cool snowboarding. And also, he's got super cool snow trailing out from behind him, but it kind of just blends into the hillside. Yeah,
it gets a little lost, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Also, I think the fact that you don't see the left arm, it's just sort of like it's not bad. It's just not. There might have been now you do, but there might have been a more compelling way to capture it, or there might be a frame right before or after this where his animation, his gesture is a little bit more exciting. I do love the halo in the sky. To me, that becomes such a feature. So
Yeah. I brought shadows up 65, and then we see that other arm there. I feel like that's a little bit more of a snowboard pose, and I think that helps.
Yeah, definitely.
It really improved, when you brightened that up, I thought.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Eric Anderson has Bruny Island Lighthouse.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So I can't tell on this. Is there a bit of a halo around, or is it just the positioning with the stars? I'm sorry, I didn't finish my sentence. A halo around the lighthouse.
I believe it's just the positioning of the stars, and it feels like we have some side light, which is kind of contributing to that feeling. I don't know if it's moon or some artificial light over here, but we have that. It also, I mean, it's epic. It does not feel as sharp. The stars do not feel quite as sharp as I would like, Eric, in a shot like this.
Yeah.
And this is where, let's see, what do we got? We have 8 seconds, ISO 6400, good settings. I wonder if you focused on the lighthouse and your focal length distance wasn't quite enough to put the stars or the distance to stars in infinity focus.
So
go ahead.
Well, I just wonder if a shot like this, if you were to take this into Photoshop and make 2 versions of it, run one through like topaz sharpen to really try to get the stars sharp, and then maybe blend that with a shot where just where the lighthouse is in focus. I don't know. I feel like there's probably a way to recover it, or at least just tighten it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful image, like at first glance, for sure.
Yep. There's a lot to love here. I think we have a little bit of green, southern aurora, the southern aurora. I don't remember what it's called, or Aurora Australis, I think.
Yeah.
And so it is a lovely live shot. But yeah, I'd like to see those stars a little sharper. Yeah. So David, you bring up the point. There's basically 2 ways to do this. One is to take 2 shots. One where you're focusing on the lighthouse, and one where you're making sure you got infinity focus and you're stacking those together in Photoshop. Or you can, photo pills is my choice. You can get out photo pills and calculate for your focal distance how far from your foreground subject you need to be to make sure that the background is also in focus.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it's not easily possible, the distance you have to be. But and that's where you go back to a kind of a 2-shot system.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Really beautiful. All right, Eric. Kevin. We've got Kevin's reflection.
It needs a bison.
Well, take the one that you executed from the other shot and just throw it in this one.
That's right. We could even put them behind a tree. It'd fit in very nicely. That wouldn't be hard. No. I think this is a lovely image. I right away want to add a little bit more contrast. And I think, again, that's a bit of personal preference. I mean, there certainly is a style of a little bit flatter and more muted tones, but I think bringing contrast up makes it pop a bit more for me.
Yeah. Do me a favor, Toby. Can you just crop up from the bottom a little bit? Just almost lose the water, not the water, but the, I just want to, I don't know. Reflection shots are tricky for me because they oftentimes end up very symmetrical with the horizon, or the basically the bank of the water being right down the middle. And so I just sometimes like to see what would it look like if I go that way, or even the other way, bring the sky out, or I don't know. It just
Yep. I think that's a great suggestion, because when we bring in, we still have the power of the reflection. In fact, almost more so, I feel like we have this just kind of end to end, edge to edge repetition, which makes for a more powerful image. And we really start to notice, I think, the trunks more. Yeah. I like it. I think it's a good suggestion. And you've moved away from the kind of just straight asymmetrical shot. No, sorry, symmetrical shot. Yeah.
It is a beautiful shot. It's just has I love it.
Good. All right, we moved on. Brian's Up, Up, and Away. No, fill her up. Sorry. Up and away is the title I made up in my head as I saw the thumbnail. It's actually fill her up, which is a little bit more appropriate. Nice. It's nice. I love that, we have incredibly bright flames here, but you have got pretty good detail in them until it gets up into this kind of larger part. And I don't know if you guys could see this. I feel like there's just a bit of a halo here. Just a bit that I want to watch for.
It seems, are the colors maybe like desaturated or? I don't know. It just has a little bit strange of a color tone.
Yep. It doesn't look like it is based on what I'm seeing here. And let's see if there's any brushing that's happened. No, but any other kind of gradient? No. But I get that feeling too, and I'm glad you said that. So I'm going to get a brush real quick. Increase saturation, warmth, exposure a little bit, and let's just brush onto our balloon and see what happens.
Yeah.
And now I feel like what we're getting more of is a feeling of this light really starting to glow through the balloon in a way that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had your auto mask on. I didn't know if that was.
Oh, did I?
Jacking up some of the.
Oh, look, it nicely skipped over. Yeah, it's a good point. Thanks for saying that. Auto mask I usually turn off if I'm just doing quick brushing because it really does slow down the process. But yeah, let's make it even a little bit warmer. What happens if we do this too? Yeah.
That's cool though. I mean,
yeah. And let's do shadows a little bit too. There, I think there's some room for glow through in there.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice, Brian. All right, we're going to move on. We've got Ursula's shadows and light.
All right.
Oh, you know what's so interesting? I almost, I was looking at these images earlier in Finder, where if it's a DNG, it shows me in Finder on Mac, it shows me the whole image. And if I hit R right now, we'll see it too. Yes, there's a whole bunch more. And in my mind, I was like, okay, Ursula, this is usually you submit images of a little bit higher caliber. There, I think you should crop into the center. That's what I thought in my head. But you had done that already. So,
there you go.
There we go. There we go.
That was a good place to crop.
Yes, it was. I think there's a simple, much simpler, cleaner story here. But I don't know. It's still suffering from some other issues. Like we kind of fade off into this muddy area back here. That doesn't interest me too much. What happens if we come in a little bit? Let's see.
I was gonna say, can we come in a lot tighter?
Yes. And also, I know these are part of the story too, but they're not really in focus. I'm gonna come past those and let's see what we think.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think you're on the right path. It's just.
So this is a tough shot because it's hard. Like we're trying to find a focal point. So I know when I'm shooting macro patterns that if I haven't decided what the strong focal point is, that everybody else is going to struggle. And I feel like that's happening here a little bit, where she honed in on the really good light when she was cropping, but you really want to be shooting for composition. And so here we're kind of creating the composition after the fact. So that's always more of a struggle.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things that I like. I'm starting to see as we've come really tight in, I'm kind of feeling like we have a little bit of an S curve of these flowers here, and that's an idea. But Tonya, I think you said it really nicely. We're struggling to really find the kind of focus of this, both literally and figuratively, of this image, which makes the viewer struggle a little, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I think but congratulations on your new macro lens, Ursula. I see this was shot with that 70 millimeter. And this is a great example of, you shot it at f9. So folks watching this probably think f9, that's plenty of focus to get everything in focus. But that's right. Not with macro. And as Tonya knows too, if you go and check out Tanya's Instagram that we have linked below, from there you can get to her macro. And your depth of field when you're working at these closer distances, even with f9, is incredibly shallow.
Yeah.
And there are times where you can use that to your benefit, but you also want to be really careful about it.
Right. Right.
Cool. I do. I love the purple and the green. Those are nice contrasty colors there. And I think within this space, you have a couple of different, more simple stories that you could go back and capture. Nice.
Definitely.
Thanks, Ursula. And finally, Timmy Scott's got our Racing the Sun shot.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. This was from our early February trip to Alaska to follow the Yukon Quest sled dog race. And this is great.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, Tim, you know, I've known Tim for a while now, and, you know, hanging out with him in Tanzania and talking a lot about this stuff. I've just seen Tim grow so much in his photography in the last 3 years that I've been working with you guys. And you know, I think this image just starts from a place of, it's already really great. I don't know. I struggle sometimes I guess I could just come up with stuff, but you know, I mean, some of the dogs are a little bit in shadow, but that's kind of expected. You've got the sun shining through the trees. So, I really don't have anything. It's,
Can you just zoom in on like the kind of centerish dog? Is that his breath? That's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that really kind of helps me, this image for me, is we have the breath. We have, it was so cold that the snow is powdery.
Yeah.
So it's being kicked up and catching a little bit of light as well. It all really makes for a nice image. And then we have a nice clean starburst as well. So overall, the exposure of this image is very good. The editing of it is very good. If you're watching, I felt like maybe the amount of white matte you had was a little bit more than I would, but that's really all I got.
Yeah, it's like, exactly. It's like the image within the mat is, I don't know. It's just, it has sort of this documentary style to it, where it's not like you could hang this on the wall, but you're also telling just a really great story of, you know, these sled dogs, and it's just well executed. Yep.
Very nicely. Very, very nicely done. Steve Partridge says maybe brighten the guy a little bit. Yeah, you might be able to brighten him. He's got I don't know. When I zoom in, he's all right. You maybe could bring him up a little bit more. What happens if we bring him up?
That's the only thing I was going to say, is like maybe brighten up some of the dogs and the guy in the back. Just if you really did like a detailed job of it, it might just add a little bit more appeal to it. But my gosh.
You know, actually, what I brought everything a little bit brighter and warmed it up, which makes me, I might paint a little bit more warmth over these trees to kind of catch that sunlight.
Yeah.
I think that might improve it a little bit.
It looks good though, what you did. Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because I was actually thinking that I might go to where you can pull up all of the colors and just work in the orange.
Good point. That's another way to work through this. You could also work in the highlights and warm them up a little bit, or you could kind of come in here and make the orange and the yellows pop a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, fantastic shot.
Nice. Very nice. All right, we're coming back to us. So thank you, everybody who submitted. I know it's not always easy to put your work out there in front of everybody, but I hope you found value in our feedback. If you're watching this, you're not a PEN member, you'd like to submit, you'd like to hear what we have to say about your images, this is just one of the multiple ways you can get feedback on your images. You can learn more about that at photorec.tv/PEN. Very proud of what we do at PEN and Photo Enthusiast Network Group, and very proud of the community as well. And speaking of community, I just want to take a moment and say, because I see a couple names in chat that I have not seen gathered together in one chat in a very long time. They have been long-time fans, friends now. So Trilina, Angela, you better still be in there, Angela. I haven't seen your name. Oh, she is. Ursula, too, who actually submitted images. You know, you guys have been around since, gosh, like, you're going to make us all feel old, but we're almost coming up on a decade. Almost.
That's amazing.
So thanks.
I wasn't here that long. I don't feel old.
Good point. Yes. You don't
you're
look
not
old either.
You're not. So we got a few years on you.
If I can speak to that, though, the PEN community, like you guys especially this year, have been amazing to me. So I just want to thank you for that. Like, I've had a lot of life changes going on, and the PEN members that have reached out to me and sent me encouragement and sometimes sent me things like, thank you, Roy, and couple of the other pen members. Like, you guys are absolutely fabulous. Like, if you're not part of a community of photographers, this is the one to be in. So
yeah, you know, that's interesting you say that, because similar. I've gone through some pretty major life changes in the last decade, and so many of these people have been there for that and supportive in so many different ways. It's just great. And you know, one of the things that is special about this community is that the online interactions are similar to what I experience in the real world. That means, you know, you might meet people with different cameras, different opinions about what's important in photography. But when you have these kind of face-to-face interactions, everybody's respectful of each other. And that's the same in the community online. People are understanding and willing to listen and share their opinions. And there's no like, oh, you chose Sony. Well, you're an idiot because Canon's about to come out with this R3 and blow everybody away. That's not the importance of the group. And I just really, really appreciate that on so many levels.
That's awesome. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Chris says, I can't believe I think Toby is rounding up. Yeah, only a little. Only a little. It is 2021. The other day I was asking David McKay, I was like, okay, when are we doing this trip? Are you going to do it in 2021? He's like, dude, it is 2021.
I just can't even believe we're talking about 2021. It's just amazing. So
yeah. Yes, I know. Well, speaking of 2021, let's talk a little bit about futuristic cameras. The Canon R3 had its development announcement yesterday. It's so funny. If you go to Sony Alpha Rumors, they're like, okay, Sony released the A1. It's amazing. So Nikon and Canon had to announce the development of something as similarly amazing. Isn't that funny? And then over on the Canon side, they're like, here comes the R3. It's going to blow Sony out of the water. And it's exactly what you don't get in our community, but it's kind of fun to sit on the sidelines and watch.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say that this looks impressive on a lot of levels. And as a Sony A1 user, and I said I was going to give a little bit of a trip report in this video, I'll just say that I was very, very happy with the A1 performance in Tanzania for the most part. I will have a more lengthy video coming out at some point about that. You know, is it a perfect camera? No. Is it a good value for some people? I think so. But let's talk about the R3 a little bit more because, well, I think the most interesting thing is the fact that it's going to have eye focus tracking. Well, I'm saying that incorrectly because what do we have to call it? It's actually eye controlled focus. Because you hear the first thing I say, you say, well, okay, Nikon's already got that, Sony's already got that, Canon already has that, meaning that it automatically finds the eye of your subject. No, this is something that Canon first had in cameras as far back as the mid-90s, where it watches your eye to see what in the viewfinder you're looking at and then activates the focus points where you're looking.
Oh my gosh.
So it is called, am I sharing my screen? No, not, so nobody knows what I'm showing.
It's called the devil.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
All right, so here it is. It is.
Am I the only one that's really confused by that? Like, my eyeball takes up the whole viewfinder.
Yes, I mean, when you look through it, if you think about it, you are looking at specific areas within the viewfinder. You are focusing on subjects within that. But you bring up a good point. I'll hold on to that thought though for a second, because all right, so you know, the EOS 3 had it. Here's Canon's, you know, how to calibrate it. It's called eye control focus point selection. What's not really clear with the R3 is it going to allow you to move? I mean, because this is back when, let's find, oh, they don't have the shot of it, do they? Let's look back here. Okay, so this is back when, you know, a DSLR had a limited number of focus points, and they're kind of are centered in this case. But when we move to mirrorless, Canon, Sony, Nikon, they have bajillions of focus points when you go to the smallest point, and they go almost all the way out to the very edges of the viewfinder. So the question is, will it allow you to move a single point anywhere within the frame just by looking? Or will it be a little bit more limited? I'm not sure. But maybe we should step back and say, okay, so here's a picture of the body. It looks, I'll say sexy. It looks pretty sexy. I love that kind of more carbon fiber looking wrap to it. Does have an integrated battery grip. What else is big about it? It's going to have a stacked CMOS sensor and backlit as well. So this means that this is Canon's first in that. This is what Sony's been doing for a while. It's allowed them to have very fast readouts. I did not use the shutter for any of my shots in Tanzania. It was all electronic shutter, which basically means the sensor turns off and turns back on to capture a picture. Turns on.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So it's completely silent, except that it makes a fake noise to let you know you took a picture. The benefits of that is less wear and tear, incredibly fast, up to 30 frames per second, which this Canon will have as well. And it also should have better low light performance because they move a lot of the kind of foundation of the chip behind it, so it's not in the way of the light gathering. I think this is the most simple way to say it.
Sure.
So Angela just says sorcery. Yes, it's sorcery.
It's sorcery. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sorcery. So, and this is going to be designed in-house, which will be interesting. When Sony's first fast sensor was a 24 megapixel with the A9. Now we're up to the 50 and the A1. So it'll be really interesting to see where Canon comes into this. Will they come in at a slightly lower megapixel amount because they don't have the kind of the background experience to jump right to 50? I don't know. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
The eye input I talked about. And that's basically all we know other than, yes, 30 frames per second. And where's Canon's own? Okay, yeah. It's going to have that stack sensor up to 30 frames per second, although they did admit in the full details that will be limited to certain lenses, very similar to the Sony. Sony's 30 frames per second. Sounds great on paper, but in reality, it's not going to work with all lenses, and it's not going to work in all modes. We've got this autofocus system that is going to recognize from birds to animals to people. And, again, that was something that I was really excited about with the A1. You can switch between birds, animals, and people. And birds, I was really impressed with on the A1. Animals was a little bit more hit or miss with Tanzania wildlife. An elephant, not so much it would find the eye. But cats, it would find the eye of the lions very, very easily, and the leopard as well, even at that distance. So, and of course, a rugged body, and it's being announced along with two hugely important lenses for wildlife photographers, the RF400 and the 600 f4. And again, I don't mean to constantly compare this to Sony, but these are two of Sony's bread and butter lenses for serious wildlife and sports photographers.
Sure.
So it's really exciting to see Canon coming up kind of on par with Sony, if not maybe passing it in this model.
That's awesome. And like in 3 years, Nikon might be in the same spot. That'd be really cool.
Well, we have the Z9 announcement, which, body-wise looks very, very similar. We have very few details about that, though, don't we?
Right. It's this stacked sensor. I kind of went back and looked at some specs today because I think the Z9 looks beautiful. Like the body of it looks like a great camera, but who knows? I'm curious with the 30 frames per second. Did you use that in Tanzania much, or did you have lenses? I mean, you have the lenses that.
Yep, I have the 100 to 400 right here. The 100 to 400 basically lived on my camera in Tanzania, sometimes with the extender for 560 millimeters.
Yeah.
I used it occasionally.
Yeah.
But not very often.
Yeah.
20 frames per second is just fine.
Yeah, I mean, because I just wonder, obviously there's always going to be a time and place for certain features, but I can see this being one of those things where a bunch of dudes on some forum get in some, shouting match about 30 frames per second versus some other frames per second. And it's funny because I think sometimes these specs, while they're impressive in the number, that the real world application of them sometimes, a lot of times it's not really as important as it might seem. But then again, Canon can't come out with something that's like 20 frames per second when Sony's leading with 30. And I think it's kind of like the megapixel wars. It just gets to this point where you're like, do I really need 60 something megapixels? Well, probably not. But if this manufacturer doesn't come out with something that sounds better in numbers than something else, then they're going to fall behind. It's just so funny how I guess technology's always been like that to some degree.
Yes, it has. I think yes, yeah, it has. I'll tell you. Here's what's interesting about 30 frames per second. I like having it in my back pocket at times because with certain birds, they blink a lot. Believe it or not, I noticed. They bring down that little white nictitating membrane, and then so you'll have like a bunch of shots where he might be looking in the right direction, but he blinked.
Yeah.
And being able to fire off 30 frames per second gives you a ridiculous number that you then have to go through. But it does give you a much better chance of finding that one where all of the elements you want lined up just right.
Yeah, I could definitely see the value. It seems like one of those, if you're good at your craft, there are going to be times when you're like, you know what, this is a great time to use this advanced feature. There are other times when you're like, I don't need to do that. Like, why would I shoot 30 frames per second of something that's just that's not blinking all the time or is going to just erratically just run off or something. And I need to but yeah, I mean, if you can use these things to your advantage, you might as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That's good said. Roger says, and Roger is a fantastic bird photographer with way more birds, especially birds in flight experience than I have, saying 20 or even 30 frames per second is a total waste of time. So it's very interesting to hear you say that, Roger. I think you're mostly working with a camera that's about 10? And if you're happy shooting birds, then maybe I should be happy too. I don't know. Steve Partridge has a great question that I think we could stop and answer for a moment right now, David Carr. And that's how many pictures did we capture on this Tanzania trip? Do you want to go first?
Oh, gosh. Oh, me, like personally or total?
Or like what you keep? Because that's a different question.
Oh, yeah. Because, I was going to say, Paul Anderson, I know, shot about 10,000. So if you're talking cumulatively, no, I don't. I think I was close to 4,000. And I've already gone through and done pretty much a run through of everything to kind of to start my initial picking. And I'm at 600 right now that I'm interested in keeping. That doesn't mean I will keep all 600, but it gets me. I'm narrowing it down.
Yeah, nice. I shot just over 6,000. On this trip, and that included one of the star things. I don't think no time lapses. So really about just over 6,000. And before I left Tanzania, I had it narrowed down to 2,200.
Okay.
And then I have not done a great job of going through and picking out of that 2,200 yet, but it is a much smaller number. I think 600 sounds probably about right. And, I'll be, below that for pictures that I'm really excited in keeping. I still have a couple of series of elephants kind of fighting with their trunks and stuff, and haven't decided out of what might be like 200 pictures. There's probably 4 in there.
Right. Yeah. It's always a paring down process. It's, there's some that I know I'm not going to do anything with. And then some where I'm like, well, maybe, but this one's a little bit better than that one. But this one, but yeah.
At least we don't have to travel with film anymore. Like I remember in high school going to Spain with like 25 rolls of film and hoping that was enough.
Yeah, can you imagine? I can't even imagine that. No thanks.
You still had film cameras when you were in high school? What? That was all digital.
You're right. I'm old enough to hang with you guys, trust me.
Not believing it.
You just don't look it. All right.
I actually started printing in the darkroom. Like that was my
cool.
That was my start, so I'm very familiar with film.
That's awesome.
Yeah. A couple comments that I think are important that I want to highlight. Lori says, "Hey, I just bought the R5." Well, I'll say this. We talked about this when the A1 came out. I reviewed the R5. As I said, I have the A1. I haven't really officially reviewed it yet, but it makes the R5 look like a much better value, in my opinion, because it hangs very close in a lot of ways with the Sony A1. And with Canon releasing more and more native RF glasses, although the EF glass with the adapter work fantastic too, it really starts to look like a better value. One of my main complaints with the R5 was it was a little pricey. The question here, though, is what is this R3 going to be priced at? And this name, R3, it's not R1, which leaves space above it in that 1DX category. So this isn't going to be a true 1DX replacement, but more of something in between.
Yeah, it's mysterious to me because it didn't come off as like flagship level maybe on the specs it does, but just the whole presentation of it wasn't like, and now we present
Yeah.
the all new. It's like where I felt like the Nikon, the Z9 felt like this monumental pre-announcement, although we have yet to see what it's actually going to be. But yeah, it's mysterious.
Yeah, cool. And the other comment that I think was interesting from where to go, Renato says, more than frames per second, what we all sports photographers need the most is more sharper, focused photos per shot. Yeah, and I'll say this, that is one of the things that I'm most impressed with on the A1 is the number of out of focus shots is incredibly small compared to other cameras I've shot with on other Tanzania trips.
That's fantastic.
And I think in some ways it should be like that. I paid a lot of money for it, and it's one of the newest and best autofocusing cameras on the market, period.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that in the real world, it does perform. There was like 7 days of solid photography, tons and tons of photos. There was only one moment that stands out in my mind where I was photographing an elephant, which is a nice large target. And for whatever reason, I still had it on zone wide that evening, and it jumped down to the grass in front of the elephant, right when the elephant flapped its ears and looked most majestic. And it did that twice in a row. And so it really stands out in my mind as like, dang it, that's annoying. But out of all of the rest of the week, there was never a moment where the camera frustrated me or missed focus when it wasn't my fault, or, there was something incredibly challenging, like a tiny bird behind a bunch of branches or something like that. But so really impressive. And I think we're going to see something very similar here on these cameras.
I bet we will. And I will say this too, like it really, really dawned on me on the trip. I said this to several of the clients that if you learn nothing else in the next year as a photographer, if you learn nothing else, learn how to focus your camera. Like to whatever camera you have, whatever the highest capability it has in its ability to focus, learn how to do that. Yeah. Because that makes all the difference in most of our shots. A lot of times you've got a good composition, you have a great subject, it just didn't nail the focus. And that happens to me a lot, and I'm better at it. And I admit, the Nikon, the Z cameras are great, but they're not quite up to snuff with where Sony is on the focusing and where Canon is. So I have to be a little bit more proactive in that. And, but gosh, if you learn how to focus and what the focus modes mean, and just become a wizard about that with your camera, that will matter more than which lens you put on or which, f-stop you were at. All that other stuff matters, but focus will ruin the shot before anything else.
Yeah. Why do I feel like my eye being what chooses the focus is not going to make that better? Like, I just keep thinking about that. Like, my motion sickness, is this going to be like continuous focus when it's not always nailing what I'm hoping for? How do you control that if it's not working properly? How many shots do you miss until you have to switch back into something else because it's not working for you? I don't know.
What if it's one of those things where, if I tell you not to think about pink elephants right now, that's all you can think about. So like, don't look at the grass. Don't look at the grass. And I keep looking at the grass and it keeps focusing on the grass. So,
and you have to kind of like scan your whole image to, what's in my composition. I just feel like I got questions about that.
Yeah, those are good questions. If anybody wants to know more, and Tonya, maybe you should read this. Dale Baskin, back 4 years ago now, he wrote this looking back at Canon's eye-controlled focus, and he kind of did a little write-up about it. And here's the thing I'm thinking: if they could make this so about half the people loved it back in the mid-90s, with today's technology, I'm hopeful. I'm a techno optimist. Describe me as. Okay. I am hopeful that this will be a cool feature that will work mostly. There are questions of like I think he even says in the press release, eyeglass wearers, it's not really going to work for because the distance there isn't great. Even hard contact lenses may interfere with the ability to view this, and so. The good news, I don't think they even show a back picture at all, but I know it's going to have a nice joystick back there. So even if it doesn't, have this feature that works perfectly for you, it's still going to give you all of those other options for changing your focus point as well. But yeah, it's exciting. So we'll see.
Sure that I will warm up to the idea by the time Nikon does.
Good point. Good point. Yeah. And I don't remember. So the R3, I would suspect that we will hopefully get more information not too much further into summer. And I'm sure that it will be used at the Olympics some. Plus, we should start to see those 400 and 600 millimeter lenses at the Olympics at least. I think they're going to want to get those out there. But what's interesting is you think of press conferences and you think of the sheer number of kind of machine gun shutter sounds happening. I think that's going to be less and less of a thing. If this stacked CMOS sensor is anywhere good as Sony, and so you can use it silently, you've got the Sonys now too that are working with the Associated Press. I think these press conferences are going to be a lot quieter. So that'll be kind of a neat change in the future.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We're going to start to wrap up. One other thing that I put in the title that I wanted to mention is the fact that I took this M1 Air to Tanzania with me. That was its first kind of major trip, ingesting thousands of pictures each night. And I'm really happy with it still.
It's awesome.
Really, really happy with it. There are times where Lightroom with the 50 megapixel images, it's not like blowing through them, but it is still significantly faster than my powerful iMac. And its battery life is great. I really have no complaints. And it's interesting because we're all kind of in the tech tent each night, and there's a handful of our participants in there with their different machines, some Macs, some Windows, and just watching people struggle to like, oh, I got to get plugged in because my battery's about to die. I'm importing these 1,000 photos, and this little M1 sitting over there, barely using any power, churning away, pulling all the images in. It was quite.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. I'm compelled.
Yeah. We have a press con, or we have April 20th. Apple is going to be announcing some stuff. I think it's just iPads. I don't think it's the newer M1 MXs yet, but it's I'm excited for that when it comes. The only thing I will say is it does continue to be a bit of a pain to only have 2 ports. Just 3, Apple, 3.
Yeah,
I'd be perfectly happy. But oh well, whatever. Oh, and the secret Sony upgrades. Sony upgraded the A7R4 and the A7R3 with higher resolution screens, 2 and some million dots as opposed to 1.4 million, and the 5 gigabit USB C port for charging and downloading of pictures if you like to do that direct from camera, which does annoy me a little bit as somebody who paid a lot of money for the A1, which is their flagship camera. Suddenly, these older cameras have been updated to have a higher resolution rear screen than my flagship camera. So I'm a little annoyed by that, but
that is annoying.
Sorry about that.
It's a minor annoyance. I will say that I don't use the back screen a ton for really kind of figuring out images. The viewfinder of the A1 is fantastic. I will say I'm very happy for everybody to get that upgraded USB-C to the 5 gigs, because I did use the camera direct to the Mac for downloading pictures, and that was another part of the process that I felt like really sped things along.
Oh, that's good to know.
It is fast to download these pictures because that connection, 5 gigabytes per second, gigabits. I don't know if it's bytes or bits, but it was fast.
It's a lot, whatever that is.
It was a lot. It was enough, is what I'll say. Chris has a question of how much RAM do I have in my M1? I did get the 16 gigs of RAM in here. I have never gotten the system has run out of application memory message that you asked about on this laptop. I have on other laptops before. And, again, I'm a tech optimist, but I'm not a tech genius. I don't fully understand all of the different changes that Apple has made on the silicon chips that change the architecture in there. But I know that RAM is used differently. And I've heard from people who have 8 that seem just as happy as those who have 16. So I don't think it's as critical as it has been in the past, but with something like this that is not upgradable. I mean, that's another knock you can certainly give Apple. What you buy it is what you got.
Yeah.
You are not going to be upgrading this unless you're some tech genius. I mean, like how to unglue stuff. So I went with the highest amount that I could get.
Yeah. I think it's always best. I mean, a lot of times you're splitting hairs at that point with how much more you're spending. It might be a couple $100 more at the time, but you're not going to 2 years from now be like, man, at least I saved $200, like when your computer's running slow. So.
Yep. A couple quick questions. Teresa asked a while ago, is there going to be a van trip this year? I think, do you mean an RV trip? The Moab one coming up next week is an RV trip. And then there is one in the Black Hills of South Dakota in June.
Yep.
And
June
right now,
17th.
you're on that car?
Yeah.
Right now, I don't think there's any others scheduled, but there are some changes that might happen a little bit later this year. So something could get announced as some things still get shifted around because of COVID. So Kevin Walk wants to know, what's the best depth of field calculator? I don't know. PhotoPills has one built in, and I know it's $10 for an app, which seems a little expensive, but it has so much other great stuff in there that I would use it. But if you just Google depth of field calculator, the first one that comes up is like this green background one that I use every once in a while, and I think that's good. So, yeah.
I've never used one of those.
No. Yeah, it's not something I use very often, but when I talk about, like when we do the Joshua Tree trip or any of the other kind of astrophotography ones where we want to make sure we're hitting that hyperfocal distance of having our cactus or our Joshua Tree in focus and our stars in focus, then I get it out and I talk about it. But then usually we all just kind of shrug and say, okay, if you back up a few more feet, you'll probably be good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. I think that's it. David Carr, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure. Always.
You, as you said, are working on a podcast. It's going to be sharing a little bit more about the Tanzania trip. Do you have any kind of deadline for getting that out?
Sometime before the end of the year.
Awesome.
At the rate that I go. No, I just hopefully in the next day or two. Somebody on the tour actually really encouraged me about the podcast and said I should keep doing it, and
it's good stuff.
I'm that's the plan, is to give people what they want.
Nice. Good. And if you go back far enough in history, you actually sit down with Tonya and chat a little bit.
That's right. Yeah. It was actually I think the next to last podcast that I recorded was with you, Tonya. And it was very enlightening, and just asking you about your composite work. And so, yeah, go check that out. And I really appreciate the feedback and the encouragement on that. I realized that, and I've said this before, but I realized the idea of where photography is the subject and it's a very visual thing. It's totally visual, and yet we're talking about it. So it's hard when you can't see the images, but there does seem to be enough to talk about that doesn't necessarily have to be image specific, or we don't have to be looking at it. And I've started recording video along with the audio. So if it's something you do want to go watch on YouTube, which a lot of podcasts do exist on YouTube as well now, it'll give you that option.
Awesome.
That's
awesome.
cool.
Very good. So yes, David Carr's Instagram is right there, and the link to his podcast. And here's the thing, you don't have to worry about when he's going to get it out. Just go subscribe, and then it'll appear in your little podcast app whenever you go. And you'll be driving down the road thinking this radio station's stupid. Let me see if there's a good podcast to listen to. And there it'll be. So,
in 10 years, you'll be like, I didn't even think podcasts were still a thing. So
yeah, that's very great. So thanks for joining us today. And Tonya, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's been a little hectic for you, especially participating in districts and getting all that in. So we're excited for you, crossing our fingers. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, I'm settling in. Spring is picking up. I've had a couple of photo shoots here, and I'm really starting to schedule things. So I think I'm going to settle back into routine soon. Awesome. And I'm very anxious to make some personal artworks. That's going to happen.
Very cool.
Very good. Very good. All right. Thank you. And our chat room, thanks for hanging out with us today. And if you're watching this live, take a moment and hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. That's a nice way to thank us for our time. And of course, as I said, go follow these folks, because it's really nice of them to spend their afternoons, evenings with me and chatting with you all. So I appreciate it. All right.
Love it.
We'll be back next week. Thanks for watching, everybody.